Welcome to Part E, Day 4 of the Chronology of Humanity, prepared by Father and Son Team, George and Dana Brown. Where is wisdom found? Job 28:12-28. Now, Day 4, 3001 to 4000 from creation. The beast receives his kingdom. Now, let's go back to the beginning of Day 3, when Abraham was born in 2008. At the end of Day 3, we have the 450 years of Judges, 2609 to 3058 from creation. That's actually into the fourth day. And Samson died early in the fourth day at 3008 from creation. David was born in 3025 from creation. Samuel died in 3059 from creation. So we have a whole group right here in the beginning of the fourth day. Now, 3 temples were built throughout the fourth day, and the Persians conquered Tyre in 3480 from creation, in the midst of the fourth day. As East Phoenicia falls, Abraham's children now. The reign of Alexander and his 4 generals began. Then the Punic Wars ended the Phoenician Empire. Rome versus Carthage, 118 years, from 3741 to 3859 from creation. Now, the period of kings begin with Saul being anointed captain for 2 years, 3019 to 3020 from creation. And then he was made king for 40 years, in 3021 to 3060 from creation. When Saul died, Ishbosheth was made king for a little over 1 year, from 3061 to 3062. Then David, of course, was made king 40 years. He started before Saul died in 3055 from creation to 3094 from creation. And then Solomon was made king upon David's death, or near David's death. He was king for 40 years also, from 3095 to 3134 from creation. And Israel divides in 3135 from creation, and Jeroboam went north. Now the 10 tribes, Samaria, go north with Jeroboam. 3 tribes, Jerusalem, remain with Rehoboam, Solomon's son, Daniel 7:8. Okay, Israel divided in 31-35 from creation in the beginning of Day 4. And Jeroboam was made king over all Israel. Emphasize that, all Israel. 1 Kings 12:20. When the kingdom divided, 10 tribes, Samaria, went north of the Caucasus Mountains with Jeroboam. 3 tribes, Benjamin, Levi, and those who called themselves Judah, remained with King Rehoboam. Daniel 7:8. Note, Judah had no legitimate heirs. So, in order to understand this, you have to realize that Abraham and Isaac admonished their servants and their sons not to marry a Canaanitish woman. And a Canaanitish woman symbolized the harlot. So you don't take a harlot to wife. So there's Genesis 24:3 and 37, and Genesis 26:34 and 35, and Genesis 28:1 and 6. Now, in Genesis 38:1 to 30, we have Judah marrying a Canaanitish woman. Married himself into a whoredom. In 2 Chronicles 11:1 and 12 to 14. Malachi 2:11 and 12 says the Lord's going to cut off the man that does this. The first 3 temples were Solomon's temple, Zerubbabel's temple, and Herod's temple. Solomon's temple was 3098 through 3524 from creation. Zerubbabel's temple was 3595 to 3942 from creation, and Herod's temple was 3983 to 4074 from creation, 74 years into day 5. Nebuchadnezzar, Mesopotamia, came from Mesopotamia and Babylon against Solomon's temple. He completed the destruction of Solomon's temple. Pompey, Rome, Cassandra's heirs came and completed the destruction of Zerubbabel's temple. And Titus, Rome, Cassandra's heirs again, came and completed the destruction of Herod's temple. Israel divides in 3135 from creation. That's when the 10 tribes went north. Then we had 390 years, a period of kings, and the kingdom was divided. And the Solomonic temple overlapped this period from 3098 to 3524 from creation. Now, most important is that Shishak came against the Solomonic temple and Jebus Jerusalem. The castle of David and so forth was still there in 3139 from creation. It's all west of the valley of Ben Hinnom. Now, it should be noted that Shishak came against the Israelites, and he took many captives, and therefore he injected the Israelite lineage into the black races of Africa. That was in 3139 from creation. 258 years later, we have Sennacherib coming against the city in 3397 from creation. He came against the Solomonic temple and the city of Jebus Jerusalem. And then 105 years later, you had Nebuchadnezzar's siege of Jerusalem in 3502 to 3524 from creation. Now, Sennacherib filled in around the walls. He covered up a whole lot of the exterior of the city, including the Levitical city. And Nebuchadnezzar completed the covering of everything over in 3524 from creation. That's when the 70-year Babylonian captivity of the Jews took place in 3525 to 3595 from creation. The kingdom remains divided. Okay, now Alexander's 4 generals divide the empire. This is not Israelites, this is Alexander's generals. The Ptolemies received Egypt, Palestine, south. Seleucid received Syria, Mesopotamia, and eastward. Lysimachus received Thrace, Asia Minor, northward. And Cassandra received Macedonia, Rome, westward. That's the division of the empire, Alexander's empire, in 319 BC, 3686 to 87 from creation. Okay, the Solomonic temple is shown in the diagram, and so now we're talking about Cyrus's decree to build the temple. That's in 411 BC. So the Zerubbabelian temple was built then in 3595 and remained until 3942 from creation. Now, Alexander arrived in Palestine, was taken in 332 BC. Alexander died in 323 BC. 4 generals divided the kingdom in 319 BC. The Seleucids wrested Palestine from Ptolemies. Now the generals are fighting now, or the generals' heirs are fighting. And in the Battle of Peneus, why Ptolemies lost to the Seleucids the Holy Lands in 3807 from creation. That's 198 BC. Okay, Zerubbabel's temple again in 3595 to 3942 from creation. That's 347 years. And Antiochus IV, a Seleucid, raids the temple twice. This is the Zerubbabelian temple in 3836 and 3838 from creation. That's 169 and 167 BC. Now, the Jews, of course, battled the Seleucids from 3836 to 3942 as the Maccabees and Hasmoneans. Okay, the Second Temple now is destroyed when the Romans, Pompey, the heirs of Cassandra, invaded Palestine. And the people within the temple destroyed the temple to preserve the inner temple in each case. Herod's temple began in 3983 from creation, and for 91 years it remained until it was destroyed when Titus laid siege in 4074 from creation. That's 74 years into day 5. And then later on, Bar Kokhba hid the ruins in 4134 from creation to conceal them from Emperor Hadrian. A brief history. The Phoenician Empire, Abraham's children, is very important. They were the merchants, the explorers, and they set up colonies and did all sorts of things. But they made money, that was a big factor. East Phoenicia, Tyre, originated about 2150 from creation. They're Abraham's children. Okay, it originated in 1855 BC, about then. Carthage was founded, and that's West Phoenicia, in 3191 from creation, or 814 BC. That's 1,041 years. The Persians conquered Tyre. East Phoenicia falls. That's circa 3480 from creation, 525 BC. Then you have the 3 Punic Wars over a 118-year period. West Phoenicia versus the Romans. Cassandra's heirs. Now, Phoenician Empire ends in 146 BC. That's a total of 1,709 years. Okay, the warfare, it only lasted 43 years all total, but it took place over a 118-year period. The first war was 3741 to 3764, 23 years. Carthage defends Sicily, their holdings in Sicily, and Hannibal came across the mountains from Spain and paraded up and down the Italian peninsula. It was then called the Roman Empire. Then the second one was 3787 to 3804, 17 years. The Romans take command of the seas. They take the seas away from the Carthaginians. And the third one was only 3 years. The Romans conquered Carthage in 3856 to 3859 from creation. So in 1709 years, the children of Abraham lost this great big moneymaker. Amazing events. Examine events evolving largely behind the scenes during day 4. But first, let's consider the Godhead. The Godhead viewed from the back. God's left, the north. God's right, the south. The left is Satan, and the right is Jesus. God Almighty is the head. And humans are made, quote, in our image, unquote. That's Genesis 1, 26 and 27. And 1 Kings 22, 19 speaks of the left and the right meeting with God. So every normal person conveys a likeness of the Godhead. The spirit powers reign over the earth. They include the left and the right. Satan versus Jesus. God Almighty, the head, is in command. That's 1 Kings 22:19 again. Now compare your hands. One is the image of the other, but neither can order the head to do anything, while the head reigns over both. So back on the first day of creation week, God created, way back in the beginning now, back in the first day of creation week, God created light and darkness. day and night, his right and his left, Jesus and Satan. Genesis 1:1-5, and 1 Kings 22:19 again. The Godhead is reflected in the two cherubim on either side of the mercy seat atop God's holy ark. You have the right and the left, and the cloud in the center atop the mercy seat represents God. All right, so this exaggeration, of course, is not to scale, because the cherubim were gold castings, and gold is very heavy, so they're much, much smaller than shown here. Shared dominion now, from creation unto day 4. Jesus versus Satan. A shared overall world dominion from the beginning until the end of David's reign. Very important point in time. Earlier, that's 3094 from creation. Abraham met the Godhead in Mamre. The three entities. God Almighty in the center, and Jesus on his right, and Satan on his left. Genesis 18:1-3. That is, King David shed blood, committed whoredom, and eventually died. And due to humanity's disobedience, David's world throne and scepter were removed from Israel and given to Solomon and Solomon's heirs. Whereas David's legitimate heir, Adonijah, was soon murdered by Benaiah at Solomon's behest. 1 Kings 2:12-25. Nathan's prophecy, 2 Samuel 12, verses 1-14. David took everything that Uriah the Hittite had, even his wife and his life. Nathan inquired of David regarding the penalty for such crimes, and David pronounced the penalty of repayment and death on the rich man, and Nathan pointed out that David was that rich man. But God let David live, but took all that he had, including the kingdom, and gave it to Solomon. Solomon, of course, under God, was the legal son and heir of Uriah the Hittite, of the lineage of Heth, son of the cursed Canaan. But Solomon was also unrighteous. Now we have Ahijah's prophecy, 1 Kings 11, verses 29-39. Due to Solomon's disobedience, Ahijah's prophecy foretold of events following Solomon's death. 1. Jeroboam was made king over all Israel. 1 Kings 11, verses 28-35, and 12, verse 20. 2. Rehoboam, Solomon's son and heir, acquired David's throne upon Solomon's death and reigned over one tribe. Let's repeat that, one tribe. That is, Solomon's children, including the children of Solomon's concubines. So that was Rehoboam's inheritance. 3. Rehoboam absorbed 3 tribes of Israel, Benjamin, Levi, and those who call themselves Judah. These 3 were plucked up by their roots. That's Daniel 7, verse 8, and 1 Kings 12, 21-24, and Malachi 2, 11-12, and 2 Chronicles 11, verses 1, 3, 12-14. Okay, number 4. True Israel was reduced to 10 tribes that went north with Jeroboam. The other 3, plucked up by their roots, apparently had no male heirs, or married harlots. So that's Ahijah's prophecy. 1 Kings 11, 29-39. A propagating era. Solomon and Solomon's heirs assumed the name and title Israel. But according to God's marriage laws, Solomon and Solomon's heirs are of Uriah the Hittite's lineage, children of Heth, son of the cursed Canaan. The throne over the 6th kingdom falsely assumed the name and title Israel. Changing world dominion. Now, the lineage of Ephraim belonged to David. Now, Satan, the north, and the south being Jesus, both had an influence on David. And Satan then influences Solomon. Solomon is the heir of Canaan via Uriah. Began reigning over the sixth kingdom. In Revelation 17:10-11 speaks of the sixth kingdom, seventh and eighth. Now, Solomon's heirs established Jewish people. Solomon's children intermingled with the children of Solomon's concubines. Solomon's heirs reigned on the world throne until God's holy arks were taken captive in 1985. Genesis 49:1-10 and Zechariah 5 verse 4. So in early 1988, the end of Jeremiah's 70 years, the seventh kingdom ascended to the world throne and displaced the sixth kingdom. Revelation 17:10-11 again, and Jeremiah 25:11-12 speaks of Jeremiah's 70 years, and also 29 verse 10-14. And then Daniel 4 verse 30 and 31 speaks of the demise of the sixth kingdom, and so does 5 verse 25-28 speaks of the demise of the sixth kingdom, and 8:3-20 speaks of the seventh kingdom, being the two horns of Daniel's ram, and the second horn comes up higher. Okay, back to Solomon's genealogy. Now on the left we have Abraham through David, and then blessings to Solomon because of Abraham's seed. And on the right side here we have curses from Canaan, Heth, and Uriah. Curses came to Solomon. Solomon, the origin of the throne over the sixth kingdom. On the left you have Genesis 12:1-3, the blessings upon Abraham and the promised blessings upon his seed. His seed and not necessarily his heirs. In Genesis 4 verse 8-15 and 9 verse 25 speak of the curses upon Canaan. Now whoredom, David, Bathsheba, the legal wife of Uriah, the child conceived in whoredom died. Now you have Canaan, the son of Canaan, Heth, and then the lineage of Heth, the Hittites, is Uriah. And Uriah was still alive at the time when David and Bathsheba first got together. So 2 Samuel 11:1-12:23. The concubine now. David, Bathsheba, David's legal concubine after Uriah's death, and begets Solomon, the legal son and heir of Uriah the Hittite, Heth. 2 Samuel 12:24-25, and Ruth 4:10 speaks of Ruth marrying Boaz as his concubine to bring heirs unto Mahalon, which produced Obed, Jesse, and David. Now, Solomon's family. Solomon had 700 wives. Their children are Solomon's children. And Solomon had 300 concubines. Their children belong to the dead husbands of the concubines. Yet both have been treated as Solomon's children. 1 Kings 11 verse 3. World dominion. Satan's exclusive dominion extends from David's death in day 4 until the great regeneration. It's Daniel 2:28, 37 and 38 speaks of Satan, the head of gold, the great image, and 5:18-21 and 4:17 and 4:30 and 31 speaks of the demise of the sixth kingdom. And Luke 4:5-7 said that Satan's the ruler that has world dominion. And Revelation 13:1-18 repeats that. Now, Jesus' reign resumes in the midst of his enemies, and as the firstfruits gather during the start of the great regeneration. Days 7 and 8, Psalm 110, 1 and 2, and Matthew 19:28. And the admonition, come out of her, my people, deliver thyself, rather clear that Scripture says to deliver yourself. Revelation 18:4, Jeremiah 51:6, and Zechariah 2:6 and 7. You deliver yourself by your obedience, and you enter the kingdom based on merit. Everyone is saved. All right, symbols now. On the left over here we have the north and the south. God dwells in the west and faces east. The east is away from God. So God dwells in the west and faces east. East is away from God. His left is toward the north, and his right is toward the south. The eternal kingdom, the southland, called Beulah, meaning having dominion, is the glory of all lands. Ezekiel 20, verse 6. And the southland is also called Hephzibah, meaning delightful. Isaiah 62, verse 4. The southland shall be set on high above all nations. Quote, and it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. I'll repeat that last portion. I will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Unquote. That's Deuteronomy 28, verse 1. So during day 4, because of disobedience, all humanity had been cast under God's left into the land of the north, Satan's dominion. During day 4 now, here's an interesting one. Touch your pause button and you can stop this. I'm not going to go into every one of these references and so forth. But God effectively turned his back and hid his face from humanity. And there's a few references for you. Don't forget, touch your pause button, jot them down. Symbols, too. When God turned his back, God effectively reversed matters. The north assumed the role of the south, and the south assumed the role of the north. That is, the 10 tribes went north, and Solomon's children assumed the role of Israel. So the diagram on the right now, we have the north, we have the right being in the north, and God facing west, and the left being to the south. Significant events of history. Day 4 represents a most critical period in the history of humanity, as all humanity were cast under God's left, under Satan's dominion, and must remain there until entering into the great regeneration during days 7 and 8. Understanding salvation. When people move from under God's left to under God's right, they exit the north country and enter the southland. They depart Satan's dominion and enter Jesus' dominion. Jeremiah 16, 14 and 15, and 23, 5 to 8. The left received dominion. Note again, day 4 is significant. King David was the last regent to reign under the dual dominion until the chief human shepherd was anointed in the spring of 1978. Then, like Job, Satan was allowed to afflict him until the firstfruits are gathered, but not allowed to kill him. Compare Psalm 89, verse 19, 37. There speaks of the human shepherd and everything's given to him. Verses 89, 38 to 52, where he's in great dilemma there. Tribulations are still come upon him. And also Job 1:1 to 2:10. Job was perfect, and Satan was given dominion over Job, so he could touch him, but he couldn't kill him. Dwelling under God's left. Note also, while seeking to obey God's right, one no longer abides by the practices enjoyed by God's left. One therefore swims against the stream and can expect the loss of God's 7 spirits: power, riches, wisdom, strength, honors, glory, and blessing, because Satan has dominion over these. That's Revelation 5, 6, and verse 12, and 7, verse 12. They're doled out via the 4 great powers serving God's left. And under the left, they are called beasts, and under the right, they are called carpenters. Daniel 7, 3-7 speaks of them as beasts. All right, people in a box. If people attempt to obey God's right, the left comes down on them at every turn. However, seeking to obey God and entering the first fruits outweighs all other considerations, as the time is growing very short and the promised blessings are very, very great. Whereas the second opportunity is 1,000 years into the future, and it's a step down from the first fruits. If you don't make it then, you got to wait another 500 years to get in the kingdom as saints, or another 150 years after that, you get in as eternal servants. That's slavery for eternity. Never forget, the change in spirit power on day 4 is very, very significant. Satan, God's left, received exclusive dominion over the world due to humanity's disobedience. Again, Luke 4, verse 5-7 says Satan's the ruler. And Revelation 13, verses 1-18 repeats that or backs it up. And Daniel 2, verse 37 and 38 says that Satan is the head of gold. This completes day 4 of the chronology of humanity.